At the start of Holy Week 2.5 years ago, the spire of the Cathedral of Notre Dame de Paris burned and toppled, somewhat curiously, you might think, even as the fire still raged. The authorities pronounced it an accident, notwithstanding a spate of church attacks throughout France in the months beforehand. God's kingdom of heaven is not formally a wholly owned subsidiary of the French state, but God's churches since 1905 have been the property of the government. So whatever arises in the ashes of the old cathedral is ultimately the choice of Monsieur Macron and his pals. They can't really do much to the exterior because millions of people pass by every day, and however godless they might be, they like their heritage sites to look venerable and time-worn. The inside, however, is another matter, and the Daily Telegraph reports that plans for the interior include replacing confessional boxes, altars and classical sculptures with modern art murals and state-of-the-art sound and light effects to create, quote, emotional spaces for visitors. There will be a discovery trail with an emphasis on Africa and Asia, except for the last stage of the trail, which will focus on climate change. Don't worry, there'll still be just an teensy little bit of religion in there. Bible quotations will be projected onto chapel walls in various languages. No Latin, but there will be Mandarin Chinese. So Chairman Xi will feel right at home when he takes over. The doyenne of French correspondents, Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, joins us from Paris now. Anne-Elisabeth, this seems almost too obvious a set of cliches to believe. Can it really be true that the finest minds in Paris are preparing to do this to the Cathedral of Notre Dame?
Well, they are projecting to do this to the Cathedral of Notre Dame, and I have even sort of more extraordinary news for you, because this is the idea of some bright minds at the Archbishopry of Paris who believe that the only way to make people interested in Catholicism is to dumbing it down, so to speak, and it's Monseigneur Aupetit, the Archbishop of Paris, who's apparently at the head of a team who decided that this would be a good thing. In other words, instead of what has been the traces and the art and the experience of 800 years of Catholicism at Notre Dame de Paris is not easy enough for people who visit to experience, and they've got to get explanations, and essentially it's Catholicism for, it's for everyone. It's very strange, and it's getting a bit of pushback, and on the 9th of December, there's a meeting of the Commission Nationale du Patrimoine, which is the National Heritage Commission in Paris, because the city of Paris and the state has got a voice on this, and they're beginning to get pushback, especially on Twitter, about this, saying this is one more example of the ongoing sort of destruction of what used to be the symbols of eternal France, if you will.
How much faith is left in France? In the south of the country, you have the most beautiful medieval churches, and I notice every time I'm there, a few years back, they used to hold a mass in that beautiful medieval church once every 3 weeks. Then it becomes once every 5 weeks. Then it becomes once every 7 weeks, and they're sharing a priest with more and more parishes. But if you can't, and I understand in a small village that can be difficult in a land that's losing its faith. But when you think about a great cathedral in the center of national life, if, as you say, the men who run the church don't understand the profundity of their own faith, why would they expect anybody else to go along with it?
I'm entirely with you. It is very true that, first of all, there aren't that many priests. I mean, there are vocations, and you have new priests, and you have new seminaries, and there are some organizations that actually are revivifying the seminaries in provincial France. But still, it is true that you've got priests who have several churches to take care of, if only because people are also leaving those villages. It's not just that they're leaving the churches, it's that young people go and find work where there is work. So that's part of the general problem. But if you go to Notre Dame on a Sunday morning, there will be Mass, and the Mass is well attended. And if you go to other churches in Paris, there is Mass, and the Mass is well attended. And it's already, I mean, it's the mass post-Vatican II, essentially because there's a sort of political battle that since Vatican II has been fought between traditionalist Catholics and those who believe that modernizing things is going to bring more people in the churches. I'm not going to take sides here, but I do notice that in traditionalist churches, you actually find more people regularly at Mass than in the others. But all the same, especially with the splendor of a place like Notre Dame, with the statues and the stained glass and the paintings and everything that has been added over the centuries to make this church what it is, including the 19th century restoration that, instant experts during the fire started telling us was a bad restoration. It was a wonderful restoration, and all of this was motivated by faith.
Yep, absolutely. And you're quite right there, Anne-Elizabeth, and there is no market. As many of the fire-breathing mullahs could tell you, there is no market for a faith that has no faith in itself.